Hi, my name is Bill Seng, and this is the Bill Seng Podcast. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast at this episode's conclusion. Today, we are going to be talking about conservative news and media. Now, some of you might be scratching your heads. What's the difference between that sort of media and the type of media that we listen to mainstream? And the reality is the mainstream is almost entirely approached from a left of center perspective, meaning that it's more liberal, more progressive with how it perceives the world. So we kind of have to define our terms real quick too. You have conservative and then you have liberal and progressive. And the way I understand it is that conservatism really is the belief that you can approach the world just as it is without having to interpret any sort of special meaning or trying to look into people's motives through their actions. You're just simply seeing the world as it is. Where in liberal sort of perspective, you're looking more so at the world through a lens of grievance, and in a progressive perspective, you're looking at the world sort of through an evolutionary lens where meaning is always changing and shifting. And so the people we're going to be talking about today and the programs we're going to be talking about today are going to approach the world simply as it is and help us to understand the world by giving us straightforward, good information. If you're anything like me, you probably want to follow people that have similar belief systems. And this is an incredible phenomenon that in the late 80s and early 90s, there came somebody onto the world stage, and I actually did a podcast episode on him by the name of Rush Limbaugh. And he actually transformed the entire trajectory of the media, in that before him, there really was no conservative alternative for people to listen to or to really even be entertained by. And since then, we have developed an appreciation for listening to a conservative perspective. We being conservative Christians that love and appreciate America. Since then, a lot of different conservative entertainers, personalities have arisen on the stage to help people to see the world through a conservative point of view. And I'm going to give you some of the names of these people and their programs right now. Now, some of these people you may have heard of, some of these programs you may have heard of, some of them maybe you haven't. But I think it's important to get their names out there and to tell you maybe a little bit about each one of them. The first three I'm going to mention kind of all go together. And for me, the very first one that I came across that had a big impact was Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager. And what he is most famous for is Prager University. Now, what I really appreciate about Dennis Prager is his deep thought into the ideas of love, his appreciation for America, but also how he has organized Prager University into this great entity that brings together different conservative minds to talk about how the founding of America was good and how we can apply the principles of America's founding to today. Another one is Ben Shapiro. I feel like you can't mention Dennis Prager without mentioning Ben Shapiro as well, as he's somewhat of a disciple of Dennis Prager. And actually, Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro are both Jews. Now, Prager would not consider himself an Orthodox Jew. Ben Shapiro is actually an Orthodox Jew, and he has a program called The Daily Wire, and I would say a network called The Daily Wire as well. In fact, he has even started making conservative entertainment. So they've just released a movie called Run, Hide, Fight, and it's approaching a situation from a conservative perspective. And so these two are two really important names in conservative media. And the third one is closely related to them as well, and his name is Steven Crowder from Louder with Crowder. He sees the comedy in how the left approaches the world, but he also picks on some of the guys on our side as well, all in good fun. Speaking of comedy, I'd like to tell you about one of my favorite comedy sources these days. Fake news you can trust, the Babylon Bee. I am so glad that these guys have a podcast. I remember the first time I came across a Babylon Bee article. I don't remember what it was, but I do remember articles since, such as how Santa Claus became a Calvinist and just other sorts of things that they wrote that are just fun, funny, and sometimes even enlightening through a comedic perspective, but they are definitely conservatives and Christians that, ironically, you can trust their information through their satirical approach to the news. Another news source that I have come to appreciate is Newsmax. Now, the thing I appreciate most about Newsmax is that they're reliable. What does that mean? They might not always make you happy, but they will tell you the truth. And this has happened multiple times for me, where I've gone to their website to see what they have to say about a situation, and I'm disappointed. Not by them, but by the reality. On the other hand, you know that when they give you good news, you can trust that as well. So Newsmax is something that has become a stronger and stronger news entity as this year has progressed. And so I highly encourage, if you want to find a good news source, maybe forego the traditional media outlets and look at something like Newsmax. And then there's another one that's not so much of a news outlet, but a person, Oliver North's Real American Heroes. What I like about Oliver North is his Christian perspective and how he deeply loves America, and also his optimistic approach to life and to the events going on in the world right now. My wife particularly really likes his program a lot, as you can learn an awful lot about life through listening to the people he invites onto his program. Now for this next one, guys, don't tell anybody I told you about this one, because it's mostly for women, but she is very, very smart. So I'd like to mention Sissy Graham Lynch. And what's refreshing about her is how she approaches the happenings of our day, the events of our day, from a Christian perspective. And she doesn't water it down. She's very straightforward about everything that's happening and how it measures up in relation to the Bible and to the gospel message. So guys, if you want to listen to her too, that's great. It's a program that's mostly for women, but again, highly entertaining and highly informative. Since we're talking about faith right now, I'd like to bring up another person that's very dear to me. His name is Pastor Chuck Swindoll, and I proudly say that he is my favorite pastor to listen to in podcast form or on the radio, whatever it might be. And what I love about Chuck Swindoll is that he's straightforward, so you're going to get the truth from him, but he's also very entertaining. He's a funny man. I love his sense of humor, but his insights into the Bible are remarkable. His program's called Insight for Living, and I highly encourage you to check out Pastor Chuck Swindoll's vast archive of messages and sermon series, as he will educate you and he'll entertain you with his just wonderful personality. The next one you're probably all familiar with, a man by the name of Mike Rowe. So Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe. He has all sorts of programs, but they all revolve around similar themes of hard work, American values. And what's really refreshing about Mike Rowe is just how deep the man is in such a practical way. In fact, he's one of the speakers and teachers in Prager University. You'll see him on there. He's got a good relationship with Dennis Prager, and you'll be blown away by how much this man knows. Another really smart man that I like to listen to that will help you out in a very practical way is Dave Ramsey. And Dave's been on the scene for quite a while. I remember coming across him for the first time in a Sunday school class when I was at Cleveland State University at a church called Cedar Hill Baptist Church. We were watching Dave Ramsey talk about how to manage your money, how to be debt-free. And I remember just having my mind blown by this guy, as he was just so practical, so biblical, and his values just were aligning with me as a Christian. And Dave Ramsey himself, he says that you cannot have financial peace unless you are at peace with the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ. Something along those lines. I probably got the quote wrong, but you get the gist of it. Dave Ramsey wants to honor God first, and he wants us to be able to do that through managing our finances correctly and in a right sort of way. The next couple of people I'm going to mention fall into a category, and I shudder when I say it because it's almost an oxymoron: trustworthy politicians. When these people talk, I think it's worthwhile listening because they make good on their word, and I encourage you to follow them on social media like Facebook, Twitter, whatever platforms they may exist on in the world of social media. The first one I'd like to mention was one that blew me away on the 4th of July in South Dakota. Her name is Kristi Noem, and she's been making some really bold stances in South Dakota, and I'm just learning more and more about her, and I'm very impressed by her bravery and boldness. Another one that I have known for a number of years now is the governor of Florida. His name is Ron DeSantis. I think that Ron needs a tremendous amount of support from all of America, not just Floridians, because he has taken some strong stands on COVID-19 and with the lockdowns and everything. He has been a pioneer and a trailblazer in terms of how to handle it. And so I think that we need to give our support to him. I think that we need to rally around him and show him that we love him, as he is a politician that is worth every bit of, if you're to measure his weight in gold, he would be worth every penny, I guess. And then finally, being an Ohioan, I very much appreciate this man, Jim Jordan. Now, really quick about Jim Jordan, I have to put this plug in for him, more so for his brother, Jeff Jordan, who runs one of the greatest wrestling camps in all the land. And it's here in Ohio, Jeff Jordan. I remember hearing about that ever since I was a little boy, and I used to wrestle for quite some time. And you couldn't wrestle in Ohio without hearing about Jeff Jordan. Well, Jim Jordan's made himself known, and he is a representative of Ohio. In fact, he's becoming even more present on the news, mainstream and otherwise, more so than ever these days, as he is consistent, he fights for the right things, and he never backs down from a fight. And of course, I'm talking about from an ideological perspective. Whenever he starts to hear nonsense, he points it out, he pushes back, and he makes sure that the truth is known. So these are three people that you got to support, and you got to like them on Facebook and support them in whatever way you possibly can. Again, that's Kristi Noem, Ron DeSantis, and Jim Jordan. I believe that God has raised these people up for times like these. And what I really enjoy about them is that they're actually fun, they're smart, they give you information that you can't hear anywhere else, and they're pro-America and pro-Christian. And I personally believe, as a Christian, as a conservative, that when we hold to biblical values, when we hold to the values that founded this nation, that is when we are approaching the world through a perspective of truth, absolutes, where we can know why we are here on this world, and we're able to find our purpose and live out our purpose according to the way that God made us, according to the gifts that he has given us and the calling he has placed on our lives. My name is Bill Seng. This is Bill Seng Podcast.